Okay, so I think we'll make a start now. To everyone who's joined us so far, thank you very much for joining us for this webinar today. This is the first in our special two-part mini-series, Living Well with Dementia. And at Foothold, you know, we obviously understand all the intense challenges that dementia can bring, both in terms of the emotional impact and coming to terms with the fact that you might now have to care for a family member and basically, you know, in general, what it means for your family. And also as well, obviously, in terms of making sure that the well-being of the person who's living with dementia is being managed in the best way possible. So I don't want to talk too long about this, but, you know, I want to obviously hand you over to Dr. Kellen Lee, who's joining us today. She'll be doing the presentation today and in tomorrow's webinar as well, which is part 2, which will focus on the support for the families of those living with dementia. But today's webinar will focus on material citizenship and what that means for the care and the well-being of people living with dementia. But just before we do start the actual session, I'm Michael Hargreaves. I'm the Communications Officer at Foothold, and I do just want to share with you some little bits about what Foothold is and why we're here and what we do. So I'll just share with you a quick video just to start with, yeah, then we'll get going. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a bit of an insight into into what Foothold is and why we're here. But just in a nutshell, we're here to ensure that no engineer or their family members need to face life challenges without support. And that's a whole range of challenges, from financial challenges to mental health and physical health challenges, legal challenges, and everything in between. So just a bit of an overview. As I mentioned just then, we do offer a wide range of support for engineers, for IET members and for non-IET members as well, across all the different areas on there. And we also do have a range of digital support as well. Today's webinar, for instance, is part of that package. So we do monthly webinars. We have an app as well, which contains legal advice on a whole range of legal issues. We have blogs by people in our community and also our partner organisations as well. And we do have our special wellbeing hub where you can access information, advice and support on everything to do with mental health and wellbeing. And that's in partnership with Gattaca as well. And you can see just a quick overview of the different areas that we cover on the wellbeing hub, and it's completely free to join. So I'd encourage you, if you are interested and you do need a little support in that area, to sign up once we finish today's webinar. But as I say, I don't want to talk for too long, so I will hand you over to Dr. Kellen Lee in just a minute. But I just want to say as well, all the digital support that we offer is completely free for our community. But we do ask that possibly if you'd like to make a donation today to help us fund that support and enable us to keep on providing it for the community, that you make a small donation today, even if it's just £5 or £10 or whatever it is. Every little helps. So I'd just like to say, just if you'd consider making a little donation to help us keep providing our digital support, that would be very much appreciated. And that's all from me. So now I'll hand you over to Dr. Kellen Lee, and I hope you enjoy the session. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Michael, and thank you, Foothold, for inviting me to do this two-part series. It's much appreciated. Okay, so let me just share my screen. All right, Michael, can I just check that we can see the screen, please?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Can you see just what can you see now? Can you see the second slide or just one?
I can see the presenter view of the first slide.
So is that better?
Okay. Yeah, I can see the first slide now.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so thank you ever so much for people joining this session. I really do appreciate it. I hope that within this session, what you will do is you will learn a little bit more about dementia and also how we can support people to live well with dementia. So today I'm going to talk about material citizenship, but before I do, if I just give a little bit of background into who I am. So as you know, my name is Dr. Kellen Lee. I'm a chartered psychologist and academic, and I'm also the founder of Wiser Health and Social Care. Now, Wiser Health and Social Care are a business who sell material citizenship training to professional carers. So we're talking about, care homes, domiciliary care, that kind of stuff. And I'm also the founder of the Dementia Care Hub, in which we provide community groups and support for informal carers. So what I aim to do is provide care for carers across the board. I've worked in the field of ageing and dementia research for over 10 years, and the last 6 years predominantly have been developing, designing and implementing material citizenship, which is a new approach to dementia care in care homes. So before we get started on material citizenship, I thought, maybe it's a good idea just to look at, what dementia is, because I'm not sure of the people that are attending, so therefore I'm not sure of what your knowledge is. So there are around 850,000 people living with dementia in the UK. This may well be an underestimate because not everybody chooses to have a diagnosis of dementia for very valid reasons, but the rough numbers are 850,000. Dementia isn't a natural part of ageing. So yes, we may become a bit more forgetful as we get older, but dementia is a brain disease. So it isn't a natural part of ageing and not everybody will get it. Currently, we don't have a cure for dementia, and equally the parts of the brain that are damaged, the damage can't be reversed, so we can't fix it. We do have some drug therapies, but they are modest at best. They don't work for everybody, and equally, if they do work, often it's only for about 6 months. They can also have some significant side effects. So it's really important to see what works for who, what doesn't work, in order to live well with dementia. Also, dementia is a life-limiting terminal condition. So I don't think we always see it in that way. We don't see it the same as some, maybe a cancer that's terminal. We see it as kind of just a memory problem, but actually it isn't. It does affect the whole body because the brain, sends messages for the body to work. But that said, we can live well with dementia. I totally believe that we can live a better life with dementia. So dementia is an umbrella term, and the term sort of covers the loss of cognitive functioning, and that can be anything from thinking, remembering and reasoning. So it's not just being forgetful, it's when the dementia becomes to the extent in which it interferes with our daily lives. We need support to do things. And there are different types of dementia, and it's really important to understand that there are different types of dementia because they come with different symptoms. So you have Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common type of dementia. You have Lewy bodies, vascular dementia, frontal temporal, which can be quite difficult in relation to, that presents itself a lot in relation to a lack of inhibition and also lack of empathy. So that can be quite difficult for carers. It's all difficult, but frontal temporal, perhaps even more so. PCA, sorry, posterior cortical atrophy, that is something in which it affects the sight. So cognitive decline comes later on, but the sight is what's affected most in the beginning. We also have mixed dementia and Korsakoff's disease. Now, Korsakoff's disease is an alcohol-related dementia. Okay, I apologise for the dog. Somebody's just rung the doorbell. This is what working from home is like. Equally, it's useful to understand that there are stages of dementia, but it's also important not to get too stuck on what stage is somebody at, because I've read lots of articles in which people say there are 7 stages of dementia, and then you know you get carers that are saying, okay, so which stage is my loved one at, because then I know how to support them. I would say there aren't 7 stages. I would say there are 3 stages. The first is the early stage, which is the mild stage. And this is where people typically will start to misplace things and become forgetful. Difficulty with complex tasks or problem solving, difficulty in concentrating, and you'll see these short-term memory lapses. Anxiety can be present, or equally anxiety, if somebody was already anxious, that could increase. Mood changes, and also food taste changes. So what we typically see are people that have a dementia, they tend to develop this sweet tooth. So what you might find is people are really orientated to biscuits and cake and things like that. In the second stage, the middle stage, so the moderate stage, people start to become forgetful of events and personal history, starting to feel moody or withdrawn, especially in socially and mentally challenging situations, which is no surprise, because if you have a cognitive impairment, you are working harder in order to kind of engage with people, concentrate on what people are saying, and equally make sense of those things. At this stage, you may also require support in dressing. So, for example, you may see, right, I've got some trousers and some underwear, but I can't actually remember which ones to put on first, or doing up buttons, actually, how do I use that? So there may be some, requirement for support in that. Also, incontinence is something that starts to present itself in relation to the brain, won't necessarily send the message that the bladder is full. So that may happen. You may see changes in sleep patterns, such as sleep during the day and becoming restless at night, which is particularly tough for the person that's living with dementia, and also for the carer, because it changes the flow of the day. And there may be showing an increased tendency to walk and become lost. So I make it clear that it's walking, because there is this tendency for people to say the person is wandering, and that's seen as really quite a derogatory comment. Somebody is walking, they may not remember where they're going or the reason they got up to walk, but they did get up for a reason and they were going somewhere. In the later stages of dementia, so this is where we kind of term it as the more severe stages, where people may then start to require needing external support. So that may be having carers come in, or equally, around the clock. So maybe looking at residential assisted living, that kind of stuff. They may lose awareness of recent experiences as well as their surroundings, experiencing changes in physical ability, so including walking, sitting, and also eventually swallowing, which can obviously be very difficult. People at this stage can also have difficulty communicating, and also they become vulnerable to infections, particularly infections such as pneumonia. So that kind of gives an overview of the numbers of dementia and what dementia looks like. So in relation to dementia, my PhD was conducted in care homes, and what I wanted to understand was, why is it that when we go into care homes, quite often people are just waiting for things to happen to them? It's this sense of being a passive recipient of care. People don't seem to be treating it as their own home. They're very much kind of institutionalized and waiting for things to happen to them. So I looked at this and thought, is it because they don't have their own belongings to be able to get on with tasks? Because if I haven't got anything to do, I will just sit. But actually, if I've got things that I can engage with, then perhaps I would do more. So what I found in my PhD, which was conducted in care homes in the south of England, was that although care staff believed that people were encouraged to bring in their personal possessions, when I started really kind of probing, I said, right, okay, so if I was to move into a care home, would I be able to bring my hair straighteners? Because I need to make my hair doesn't look like this without hair straighteners. So would I be able to bring those in? Oh no, you wouldn't be able to bring those in. I said, all right, okay, so why not? Well, because you might burn yourself. Okay, so what about my hairdryer? Could I bring my hairdryer in so I could dry my hair in the mornings? Well, no, you wouldn't be able to bring that in. Well, one, we have a hairdresser that you would see maybe once every fortnight. And equally, if you had your hairdryer, you left it on, there could cause a fire, you could leave it in a sink. So what I started to find is that although staff actually believed that people were encouraged to bring things in, they were actually only encouraged to bring certain things in that were seen as fitting, one, for somebody that was living with dementia, and two, for what a care home actually represents in society. I also interviewed care home staff. So in the study, we included relatives of people or people that visited a resident often. The residents themselves and also care staff. So family members, when I spoke to them, they just hadn't thought about it. I think quite often, it was a very stressful time. The person was moving into, one room and they had a whole house to deal with. So it was just like, let's just take the sort of the bare minimum what that person would need. And after the interviews, they said, I wish I'd thought about this before. What I also found was that people with a dementia weren't included in decision making about their possessions. What would often happen is there would either be a crisis at home or a hospital admission, and people often were transferred straight from the hospital straight to the care home, and they weren't included in what objects and what personal possessions they wanted to take. I also found there was a lack of control over personal possessions. So this was both existing possessions and new ones. So the existing ones in relation to, members of care staff through their work would often remove things from somebody's room if it was seen as being, well, they maybe shouldn't have had that, or a family member's brought that in, or I don't think they should have that, so we'll remove it. Equally, for new possessions, often people didn't have control over their own money. So the person would then have to ask a member of care staff if they could have a possession. They would then have to ask family, and it kind of went around in this circle. So they couldn't actually buy the things that they wanted to buy. Once somebody was living in a care home, what I found was that there was a lack of opportunities to return home. So they didn't kind of have that closure either. They didn't have that, if we moved house, we would make all of these decisions. So they had no opportunities to return home because care staff felt that would be a risk. The person may not have chosen to be in that care home. So if I then take them back home to collect their possessions, they might not want to come back. And that would be a really difficult situation. So therefore, let's just alleviate any distress and they just won't be able to go back home. And care staff and some family also viewed objects as being really quite dangerous, in the hands of somebody with dementia. So there was this sense of, some of the stories were really elaborate in that, well, what if somebody brought a knife in and then they killed somebody? And you're like, okay, so what is that a real risk? But what if they brought a sword in? And you kind of like, the stories were so elaborate and embellished that the real risk actually wasn't there. That the person didn't have a history of violence. Why would they go around and commit violence on other people? So what I developed was this concept in my PhD, which was called Material Citizenship. Material because of material objects, and citizenship because I wanted people living with dementia to be empowered. And I also wanted care staff to feel empowered in order to, support somebody to live a life in which they could make decisions. So the focus of material citizenship, the definition, is the right to be included in decision making relating to personal possessions, and the right to have opportunities to use functional objects to perform everyday tasks. And when I use the term functional object, the definition for this in relation to material citizenship is any inanimate item which a person can use to perform a task, not necessarily to completion or to any perceived standard, which maintains or supports the cultivation of his or her identities. So the not necessarily to completion means that just because somebody doesn't complete something doesn't mean that they shouldn't start it. And equally, just because they don't do it to the standard that other people expect them to, doesn't mean that they shouldn't do it either. And that the cultivation of identity means, the identity can change over time, and actually that these objects can help support that identity to change. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a video, which this is for relatives of people living with dementia, which focuses on material citizenship and can enable that sort of smooth transition from home to care home, hospital to care home, in which they can think about the objects that people have.
So let's say you have to read an incredibly long email from your boss that you have to finish before the big meeting.
And control. She could choose when.
Sorry, there we go.
Hello and welcome to Material Citizenship, Functional Objects for Meaningful Lives. This is the second video in our series discussing the importance of functional objects for people living with dementia. The video is designed for people supporting a person with dementia who is moving into or living in a care home. Functional objects are items used to carry out routine tasks that give us meaning, purpose, and maintain our identity. A hairdryer, your favourite coffee mug, a certain toothbrush. These are items not essential for living, but they do help you get on with your day the way you want to. Moving into a care home can be a hard transition for everyone involved. It is a significant life change. In order to settle into a new space, it is important to have the objects that you usually use each day to maintain routines. It is often family members who are left to deal with a person's possessions, at times downsizing a person's entire home into a single room. Understanding what a person needs, wants and can take into a care home, often within short time frames, can be difficult and sometimes overwhelming. So it is important to note the routines a person has and the objects they use to perform these tasks to know what they will need to have when that time comes. People can feel a huge sense of loss, not only the objects but choice and control over their lives without them. Imagine if you were in a hotel room and had no access to a phone, a kettle, some of your clothes and shoes are missing, and you haven't got a hairdryer or iron. How would you feel? There are many things we use that are taken for granted and would only miss them if they weren't there. For example, you're ready to go out and you can't find your keys. Think of the thoughts that might go through your mind. Where are they? I thought I left them there. I must find them. You might also feel negative effects such as panic and anxiety, a racing heart, sweating, confusion. This might be how a person living with dementia may feel, not having access to their objects. This may present itself in a way in which people think it is a symptom of dementia, when in fact it's a reasonable response to not having access to their items. Therefore, it is important for a person to have those things, the things they need to live the life they want to have. Here is a real example of how functional objects are important. This is the story of a mother and daughter. The mother, Iris, had moved into a care home as she could no longer live at home, and the daughter, Janet, did not want Mum to live in the care home. Mum didn't want to live there either, however it was deemed necessary. Janet would frequently visit her mum but often felt worse for it. On one occasion, she visited her mum and had a lovely time. When asked what was different about this visit, Janet said she took in a flask of tea. What was it about that flask that made the difference? Janet's mum had never used one in the past. When asked if Janet would buy her mum a flask to have in the care home, she said no, what would be the point? She'd forget to drink the tea, she has dementia. For Mum, the flask was perhaps less about drinking tea and more about what it enabled her to do. She could be the host. The flask gave her choice and control. She could choose when to have the tea, not having to wait for staff to help. She could pour the tea, something she would have done at home. She could be Mum. This mundane object helped their relationship. Understanding how a person lives their everyday life is important for care staff to enable a person to maintain their identity. Using that certain coffee cup to drink coffee. Having access to a dishcloth to carry out household chores such as wiping down work surfaces. Having access to their mobile phone to stay connected with the world outside of the care home. Having access to that razor they always use to give themselves the shave they like. So, if a loved one is moving into a care home, take note of the ordinary, routine, often boring things they do, how and when they like to do them, and most importantly, the objects they use. Ensure they have access to these and share this information so they can be included in care plans. Through functional objects, we can empower people with dementia by giving them choice and control over the way they live their lives. We can also empower care staff to provide true person-centred care, enabling them to get to know your loved one and support them to live the life they want to live. I hope you found this video useful. Do get in contact if you would like to know more about this new approach to dementia care and the training programmes we offer. Contact Dr. Kellen Lee.
Okay, so that kind of that's on YouTube. So feel free if you think that would be useful to anybody, just to send those you know, these details will be on the recording anyway, so if you do want to access it or send it to anybody, then feel free. But hopefully that kind of gives you a flavour in relation to, you know, why objects are important, particularly in dementia care. So when we're looking at objects and their importance from a psychological perspective, we look at them in relation to the relationships that we have with them. And we often think that the most important things are relationships with other people. And I'm not suggesting that they aren't important, but equally, those objects can help facilitate relationships with other people. Because if we look at objects as an extension of the self, they are things that help us to demonstrate who we are. We don't just have things, we use things. So although there may be many things in your home which are static that you don't actually use, there will be lots of objects that you use today. And without them, that would be a problem. And I think this is the key point, in that we don't notice them because we're so used to using them, so they become overlooked. However, if there's something that you can't find, then that means that life becomes more difficult. And you know, they help keep routine. So if somebody has these certain routines, moving into a new environment, you know, a strange environment for them, to keep those routines going can keep people psychologically safe. It can enable people to make that new space home. So the lack of personal possessions can have some, you know, really difficult sort of side effects, in a sense, in that it can add to confusion. And this is the difficulty, that people may sort of say, you know, oh, that's the dementia. Well, actually, it may not be the dementia. Maybe I'm confused because I haven't got the things that I need in order to carry out the, you know, can do the things that I need to do every day. It can increase agitation, because if I keep asking for my things and nobody's getting them for me, actually I can get really frustrated. There's that lack of choice and control. So I'm now having to do what other people want me to do rather than the things that I want to do. It can also feel like it's not a safe place because my things aren't here, and equally things go missing sometimes in care homes. And although there was this sense of it's people with dementia who move things and then they forget where they've put them, I'm not saying that that isn't the case. However, what I observed was that care home practices meant that actually staff were moving things out of people's rooms. So if we take laundry as an example, Dottie, who used to get changed like 3 times a day, she loved clothes. She'd get ready at breakfast time, she'd get changed at lunchtime. If there was something going on in the afternoon, she'd get changed again. And she would just sort of leave the clothes in her room. But when she went back to her room, the clothes had been taken to the laundry because somebody thought they were dirty. So she would say, things are going missing. And staff would say, oh, you know, she's getting herself in a bit of a state. Well, actually, she wasn't. You're not listening to what she's saying. Things are going missing from her room. So when she starts carrying a radio under her arm, staff are saying, oh, that's the dementia getting worse. Actually, it wasn't. It was the fact that her clothes are going missing from her room. She doesn't want her radio to go missing. So she's carrying it around with her so that she knows where it is. There's also an increased dependency, because if I haven't got the things that I need to use, if I can't use the things to make a cup of tea or to, you know, to butter my toast or, you know, to do my hair, I'm then dependent on you to do things for me, which increases the workload of staff and decreases the independence that people have. There's also this loss of identity. I am somebody that does these things, and yet nobody's allowing me to. So my identity is being chipped away. That sense of disempowerment, I have no choice and control over things. You know, that's not a great position to be in. And also what we can see is an increase in antipsychotic drugs, because if people are becoming more confused and there is an increase in agitation, people will then find that behaviour challenging, so then perhaps go down the antipsychotic drug route, when actually what we could do is we could intervene with material citizenship if it isn't already in place, and we can then say, right, okay, well, let's look at what, you know, what is this behaviour, what is that person communicating to us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you another video. It's a little bit shorter than the one I've just shown you. And this is a video for care home staff. So again, this is on YouTube, so it can be shared. It's in the public domain. And I hope that this really kind of gives a sense of the importance of objects. Oh, hold on. Oh, that's not working. Let me, well, Michael, do you know how I can do this? That doesn't seem, the link doesn't seem to be working.
I'm not sure, just from my end. We had we had a technical issue with the first video as well, where the video wasn't playing, but people could only hear the audio. So I think if we share the videos after the webinar as well, along with the recording, then people can watch them in their own time, maybe. Because I'm not exactly sure how we can solve that right now. So if you can move on without any detriment to the presentation, then that's probably for the best. But yeah, we will share the videos afterwards, guys. So sorry for the technical difficulties here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's because I haven't embedded them, I guess. So what can you see now on your screen?
A slide with services, audience, and length.
Right, okay. So you can see, right, okay.
Yeah, so that's the next slide now. Yeah, that's where
there are yeah, so you can see it later. It's just a shame that you can't see it now, because it kind of gives a real idea of how life can change with those objects. But what I can do now is I can talk you through the impact that material citizenship has had, so all's not lost. So the impact on people living with dementia, I'm going to talk about an object, the scenario, and then after material citizenship training, what happened. So the object is a newspaper, and there was a woman who was living in a care home who wanted to deliver newspapers to other residents, and she was stopped from doing this because care staff said, well, actually, that's not her job, that's our job to do. And after the material citizenship training, they then said, actually, that is something that she can do, and we can enable her to do that. So now she delivers the newspapers each morning to other residents. She stops and she has a chat while doing it, and staff have reported improved levels of well-being for her, and also other residents enjoy her visits because she stops by and has a chat with them. The other was a blue chair, and there was a woman who had recently moved into the care home, and she was refusing to allow care staff into her room, and relationships between her and care staff, they weren't great. So after the material citizenship training, staff identified this blue chair from home, and they brought it into the care home, and she really enjoyed sitting in that chair, and apparently it reminded her of her husband who had passed away, but they used to kind of sit in a blue chair each. And once that chair was in the care home, she now allows staff into her room, and the relationships between her and staff are much more positive. There was also a woman who liked to use kitchen utensils, so she liked to bake, but she didn't engage in this activity, even though staff were offering for her to do that. And what it was that they didn't have the right kitchen utensils. So she used certain kitchen utensils. So after material citizenship, staff went out and bought her the right kitchen utensils. And this enabled her to start baking. And it also gave her a reason to get out of bed, because up until then, she didn't really have a reason to get up. In relation to the flask, I've already mentioned that in the video, which you heard but you didn't see, so I won't talk about that one. But I also want to talk about how this can also be transferred not just into care homes, but also into the lives of people that are still living at home. So I worked with a woman who she was still living at home with her husband, and he was becoming quite angry with her about money, because he always managed the money, he always managed the bank accounts, but there was the decision was made that he could no longer manage the bank account. So they did a lasting power of attorney and stuff like that. And anyway, he wanted a debit card, because what he could still do is he could still go down to the pub, he could buy himself a beer, he could then come back home afterwards. But she wouldn't allow him to have a debit card in case he got scammed or in case somebody took advantage of him. So I said to her, well, okay, so how about, you speak to the bank, get the bank to give him a card, you put maybe 30 quid in a week or whatever it is, and then that's the only amount he can have. So after she spoke to the bank, they issued him a card, and then he could go to the pub, and she got the break that she needed, and equally he wasn't angry anymore because his identity was maintained. He could have that autonomy, he could walk down, he could buy himself a beer, he could then walk back. So this isn't just about care homes, although most of my work has been done in care homes in relation to material citizenship. It can be transferred into home life as well. So the impact that material citizenship had on care staff was that what I found was that there were a lot of risk-averse practices going on, because care staff felt uneasy about positive risk-taking, because if something happens, it's going to be my fault. But after material citizenship training, management reported that staff were now working with a much more can-do attitude in the care home. Staff also worked on a basis of assessing physical harm and overlooking the psychological harm. So, you know, you can't have so for me, for example, you can't have your hair straighteners because you might burn yourself. Overlooking the fact that actually, but then I'm not going to feel good. I may not want to come out of my room. My mood would be, you know, there would be a drop in my psychological well-being, you know, just because of these hair straighteners. So after material citizenship, this provided staff with what they called a safety net. So it enabled them to weigh up both the physical and the psychological risk and then be able to make a decision. The home had task-orientated routines. So it was very much based on, these are the things that you need to do in relation to the jobs that were done in that day. And one manager said it transformed how they work. So residents can now eat when they choose rather than at meal times, and they were enabled to do more of what they wanted to. Staff used to notice that, you know, or they didn't notice that some of the staff were doing, you know, they all do an incredible job. And some of them were doing stuff that, you know, was kind of the gems, you know, that they were really supporting people to live the life that they wanted to live. And they'd say, oh, I just do that. They didn't recognise that what they were doing was person-centred, that it was excellent care. And after doing the material citizenship training, they really started to notice the things that they were doing, which were really, really great, and equally kind of encouraging other staff to do it. I found that staff lacked confidence in relation to dementia care. A lot of the training that they'd received was very much based on things like symptoms of dementia, dealing with challenging behaviour, that kind of focus, and they lacked that confidence. And after they'd attended the material citizenship training, the staff were more confident in the way that they worked, and also more confident with external medical professionals, with other residents, and also with relatives. And staff were uninspired. You know, they did a lot of e-learning which they didn't feel was relevant to their jobs. It wasn't the care home that they were in. And after the material citizenship, they felt inspired, they felt valued, and they wanted more of this type of training. So the services that we offer in relation to material citizenship, we run workshops for senior leadership teams in order to work from the top down so that staff can feel supported in changing that. Material citizenship training, in which I can go in and I deliver training to care home staff. We developed a train the trainer training, so that if you have a care organisation, you have that in-house trainers, I can train them and then they go out and roll it out to care staff. Material citizenship at home, that is in relation to dementia advisors, admiral nurses, informal carers, and also material citizenship online. So some care homes found it difficult to release care staff to do training because they just didn't have enough care staff to go around. So we developed 4 videos that are accessible online, so care staff can actually access those videos as and when they need to, which means that they can still have the training that they would like. So what does material citizenship do? It enhances psychological well-being of people living with dementia and those who care for them. It gives people choice, control and agency. So choice, the things that I want to do, control over my own belongings, and agency that I can take action with them. It enables people to live the lives they want to live for as long as is possible, and it can reduce the need for medical interventions. So I'm hoping this works. This is just, I was absolutely chuffed to bits because this was sent to me, I think it was Friday or Saturday, from an organisation called Hallmark Care Homes, who they, other care homes exist, other care home companies, but they sent me this because they have adopted material citizenship. And this is a woman who didn't used to make her own breakfast. So I'm really hoping, because this is embedded, you'll be able to hear and see this. Okay, so I mean, basically what that shows is it shows somebody who, because she has, you know, the equipment around her, she has the toaster that she can use, she has her marmalade, she has the butter, you know, she is stood there, she's making her own toast, and it may seem like such a small thing, but if you're living in a care home, and as you can see, she is completely capable of doing this herself. You know, she has been assisted in doing it, but she's capable of doing it herself. So she can start her day well. She can make her own breakfast, you know, and that's not something that everybody gets to do. Even when there are kitchenette areas that are supposed to be for people that are living in care homes, they're not always used by the people that they're made for. So I just thought it was a really great video just to show material citizenship in practice. So I'm so sorry that you couldn't see the videos, because it kind of does really bring it to life. But there are on my YouTube channel, there's some videos on there. There are two videos. The one for relatives of people with dementia who may be moving into a care home, and also for care staff. But even if you're not care staff, it just gives you a real idea of the importance of objects. There's also some academic resources in relation to, you know, the concept of material citizenship and how it developed. And there is also, feel free to contact me on my email address, which is there, telephone number that's there, and also the Dementia Care Hub. There's a link to material citizenship on that too. Also, apologies about my dog. He obviously doesn't like me to be the centre of attention, and it's just one of those things. So I hope it didn't sort of cause too much of a disturbance. So that's my presentation done. Thank you, Michael.
Excellent. Thank you, Kellen. That was a great presentation. Learned lots during that as well. So I hope that everyone else did as well. So just while we sort of finish the webinar, we do have time for a Q&A session. So if anyone does have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A now, and Kellen will be able to answer those for you as well. So yeah, that's my open invitation to you for any questions, and I'll hand back over to Kellen. Can you see the questions, Kellen?
I can. There's three in there. One is for you guys.
Okay.
Does Foothold have provision for African engineers with dementia? Somebody's pointed out no video. And also, are there any advantages to obtaining a medical diagnosis for dementia? Oh, this is a tricky one. Okay, so there are advantages in relation to the medical interventions that, you know, as I say, the results are, you know, the drugs aren't really there at the point, you know, as much as we need them. There are significant side effects, and the effects are modest. So at least it puts you on that dementia pathway, that people are aware of you and you can get support, and equally people can signpost you to different organisations that can provide that support. I would say, as a psychologist, the downside to having a diagnosis of dementia, and I will happily say this, is that then you are labelled with dementia and life can change for you in relation to how people treat you and the options that are available to you. So I think it is a personal choice. I don't think anybody should be pushed into making a decision about wanting a diagnosis. But for some people, it can also bring a relief, because it makes sense in relation to, okay, so now I understand what was going on. So it really is a very personal decision, and I hope that answers that question. Could Michael forward the links that were on this last slides? Yes. In over tidying issue when things are put in cupboards, etc. Oh, is over tidying an issue? I'm not quite sure what that means. Is over tidy? If it means, do people over tidy because they haven't got objects to things, then I would say I don't know. I mean, people often, you know, will try and find things to do, or they'll rummage around things, often because they're bored or because they haven't got things to do. What I also found was that in relation to kitchenette areas in the care homes, that quite often what would happen is that although it was built for somebody that was living in the care home, things were locked away. So that area, although it was meant for people to use, actually they couldn't use it. And if, or equally, if somebody got up to take a cup to the sink, staff would often intervene and say, don't you worry about that, we'll do that for you, with the best of intentions. But actually what it would do is it would stop that person engaging with their environment. I don't know whether I have answered that for you, Philip. Nick, how can you help an individual with dementia who appears not to want specific items? What would be a good way to find the objects to take into a care home? Okay, so I think this is a really important question, because not everybody is bothered. So there was one guy who lived in the care home, and actually he was quite happy to sit. He was quite happy for people to run around after him. He was quite happy to have everything done for him. However, there was one thing actually, which was his binoculars. So he used to sit on one side of the room and the patio doors were on the other side of the room. And because he was quite shaky, his binoculars were taken away. Nobody explained to him why. And I think because they thought they were quite valuable. If he drops them, they'll smash. So we need to take them away. And he used to get very distressed over the fact that nobody actually told him where these binoculars had gone. And what it was he could see through the patio doors and he could see out to the garden by using those binoculars. If somebody can't communicate particularly well, there are other tools out there, such as something called talking maps. So people can actually point to certain, maybe certain things that they would like to do. And then you can kind of go, right, okay, in order to do that, they would need these objects to do that. So then that means that, you know, you can communicate with people in that way. Out of sight, out of mind, feeling like stealing. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means. So out of sight, out of mind, feeling like stealing. I don't know. Certainly people that were living in care homes did feel like people were stealing from them at times, you know, as I said, like with the laundry, when people would, you know, come along and they'd whisk it away and think nothing of it. But laundry is a massive problem in care homes, because it all goes to one place and then they have to separate it out, and it doesn't always come back to the people who own it. So that is problematic, and that's something that Material Citizenship can deal with that. And I really hope that people take that on board, because it's one of the biggest complaints from relatives as well. Why is my mum got somebody else's jumper on? Why is my dad wearing something that isn't his? You know, where's that new top that I bought my mum last week? You know, that it causes a lot of friction and it causes a lot of problems, and it doesn't actually have to be that way if we just focus on the fact that objects are something that are important.
There is another question here as well, Kellen, on the chat. So it says, if one doesn't go down the medical path, are there non-medical options, for example, herbal medicines and stuff like that?
To be honest, I don't know. The medical side isn't something that I work with. It is in relation to how do we reduce the use of antipsychotics, because we know that they have significant side effects. We also know that they don't necessarily improve a person's life. So if we can avoid them, then we do. If they work for somebody, absolutely fine. I am not at all saying that we should not use medication. However, I'm not aware of any kind of herbal things that would help. That's not knowledge that I have. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
We don't have any more questions in relation to your presentation as yet. Obviously, everyone, if you do have final question that you want to ask, do it now. That's you're more than welcome to. But just in terms of the questions that were set for me, we have one here. Does Foothold have provision for African engineers with dementia? The answer to that is, for every eligible community member around the world, no matter where you live, we do offer financial support to fund adaptions that might help with someone's care. And we also can fund counselling sessions as well through our partners, if that's something that you would require or a family member would require, or whatever it is. So we do offer financial support for eligible members. And if this is something that you're looking into immediately, then I would recommend that you go to our website and go to the support page. So if you go to our website and go to contact us, I think it is, get in touch. We do have a support inquiry form on there, so you can get in touch with us that way. And there is also our digital support as well. We do have some resources about dementia and living with dementia and other similar issues. So if you go to our Wellbeing Hub, like I mentioned at the start, and sign up for free on there, you'll be able to access that information. So that's what I'd say to that. In terms of the general webinar issues, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar. It's being recorded, so everyone who signed up and everyone who's attended today will receive that, and along with that I will include the video links as well to the videos that obviously you had trouble accessing, which we do apologize for, and the links as well to the extra resources that Kellen included at the end. You'll have those as well. So yeah, that's everything from me. I think there was another question, I think, Kellen, that just popped up. Yeah, from Ross. So if you want to answer that one.
Who can give a diagnosis of dementia? Typically, you start with a GP. It depends, I think, on different areas. You tend to go to be referred to what's called a memory clinic, and that's where you have people that are consultants and people that work in relation to dementia, because obviously not all GPs have, you know, a huge awareness of dementia or don't have that kind of dementia training. So typically start with a GP and be referred generally to a memory clinic.
Perfect. I think that's all the questions. So just before we do head off, I do want to just close out with some extra information about Foothold and the webinar tomorrow as well. So just encourage you to stick around for just a couple more minutes. So hopefully you'll be able to see that. There we are. So yeah, I just want to say, obviously, thank you for everyone who joined us today. I do hope you found the webinar really useful. I know I did. There's lots of information in there that is really, really useful and also just insightful as well. Like, this is obviously something that you might not have heard of, material citizenship. So I do hope that you all got something out of today's session. As I did mention, this is a two-part mini series, so we'll be back with Kellen tomorrow for the second part, which will focus on the support that's available for families of those with dementia, specifically the We Care Dementia Care Programme. So that's tomorrow at the same time, 12 p.m. UK time, and the link is there if you haven't signed up. But you can just go to our website on the how we can help you section, and go to our webinar page and you can sign up there. So yeah, hope to see you there tomorrow as well. And just another thing as well about the support that Foothold offers. Obviously, you know, we do ask people in the engineering community if they would make donations to us to fund our work. You know, our work does really change lives. And there's just one example here. And this is Paul. He was an engineer and he was diagnosed with stage 4 advanced prostate cancer in September 2020. So obviously that was a huge challenge for him and his family. And one night he was admitted to hospital. And he was just sort of praying that that wouldn't be the last time that he'd see his family. And you can just imagine how distressing of a time that would be for him and or anyone else in that situation. And we were able to help him with financial support, and that helped him sort of keep things ticking over while he was going through this terrible time. And it meant that he could put food on the table for his family and they didn't lose their home. And he's now on the mend, and everything's going well for him. So, you know, but it kind of does beg the question, you know, what would have happened to him and his family, you know, had he not reached out to Foothold? And that's what we're here for, you know. So it really does make a difference if you can support us. And obviously if you are someone or you know someone who does need that support, obviously you can get in touch with us today, and we'd be more than happy to see how we can help. You can support us in other ways too. We do obviously do a lot of fundraising to fund our work, so you can take part in fundraising challenges. This month we are doing a Run Till It Hurts challenge, and you can get involved in that literally by setting yourself a target of how many miles you want to exercise for, or how many steps or whatever it is, and exercise in any way possible. So you can run, you can swim, you can cycle, you can do whatever you want just to reach that target, and encourage people to sponsor you in doing that as well. And there's more information about that on our website, as I've listed there. We also have volunteering roles available if you want to help us deliver our support, or you can host your own fundraising event as well. And again, there's more information on that on the website, at myfoothold.org/get-involved. And you can connect with us, obviously, again, on our website, on our social media, and our contact details are there as well if you do want to get in touch with us. As I say, this webinar will be recorded, so you will receive the webinar and the links to the videos and the extra resources over the next few days. So that's it from me. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and hopefully I'll see you for tomorrow's session. Thank you, guys.